Hello! Today I'll be working on restoring these second-hand Warhammer Terminators. The previous owner must have really doused these guys in the orange gloss enamel spray paint that I stripped off of them because there is a texture over much of each of the miniatures. Let's clean it up. These propellant scars are quite prevalent, but luckily most are kept to areas lacking detail that are easy to reach. All I have to do is scrape it away. Because of the orange color in the texture, this looks like some sort of oxidation to me, which makes me feel like I'm some sort of tech marine restoring the ancient suits to working order. Speaking of working order, look at that, I'm done. Now all I have to do is all the rest of them. There are numerous craters due to how they were cut from the sprue. By the previous owner. I filled them up with super glue and baking soda, then I sanded them down to get a nice clean contour. This shoulder pauldron looks like a sea sponge, or coral or something, but it's sanded down just the same. Nice and smooth. Uh-oh, looks like someone forgot the brush. It seems that the propellant has left the teeth very brittle, which is why they're broken. I reckon this zip tie ought to do the trick. After preparing the new teeth, I carved off the old ones and scored some striations to help give the glue some tooth. Pun intended. I glued down the longest section first, and then folded the short section over the end, using a wad of paper towel to soak up the excess glue. This is the first time I've done this, but I can't wait to make some custom chainswords in the future. The last thing to do is to drill the barrels. I've freehanded gun barrels before with a dot of black paint on a couple of my minis, but I find it more tedious than actually just drilling them out. There we go. 8 cleaned up Terminators. Now the fun part. I get to cover them in a whole bunch of decorations. First, I'll install some external power cables. It really is quite fun. Just drill a hole where you want them to go, then cut a length of armature wire. Bend it to the desired shape, then glue it in. Make sure to test fit it as many times as necessary. You know what they say, measure twice, install external power cabling once. And now it's time for studs. I mark columns on the leg with a fine point Sharpie and stagger tick marks along them to create a hexagonal pattern. Then I carve pilot holes, and then drill into them to create pockets for the studs to sink into. It helps to drill the top and bottom holes in each column first, and then drill the middle ones to make sure to get uniform intervals. I deposit superglue using a paper clip and apply individual ball bearings using a hobby knife with a magnet on it. I also press on some of the ball bearings to get them a bit further in, being careful as it's super difficult to get them out if they go in too far. Those studs are looking good. Now let's drill out this guy's armpit. At this point I remembered that the arms rotate. I take a Tyranid skull from the Citadel Skulls box, carve a divot in the cranium, and get to drilling. So much drilling. This is one of those times where I'm glad I made the arms removable. Now this soldier of space has a little skull friend to keep him company as he releases more skulls from their flesh imprisonment. Let's see, what other bits and bobs can I throw on these guys? I look through my Firstborn and Primaris itty bitty bits boxes for decorations. However, upon realizing that I don't have enough, I turn to mold putty. I think I've found the pouches that I want to duplicate, but then I remember that I have some 30k accessories I have yet to use, including some cool looking grenades. I won't bore you with the molding process, but I will mention polymer clay. This stuff is awesome. It has an infinite work time, it's easier to work with than green stuff, less brittle than milliput, especially if you underbake it, and it bakes in like 15 to 30 minutes, sometimes even faster. The only thing it can't do is be sculpted onto the miniature directly. Unless of course it's a pewter miniature. I did accidentally bake them for a little too long, but it's fine. Then I put a couple of clay pouches on this marine. And another. And another. And another. And another. And another. And another. And some more. And another. 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 And can't forget about the missile launcher. And with that, this marine has enough pouches. But just barely. I made another batch of clay, and I remembered to underbake it this time. And as you can see here, it's much smoother to cut, and more flexible too. I sliced this rib section into sections, and then carved smaller sections off the backs to line up with the wavy front. At this point, I just stuck grenades and pouches wherever I thought they made sense. and while I was at it, I put the wax and paper parts for the purity seals on. The flexibility of the clay let me bend and twist them to give the illusion of them flowing over the contours of the armor. As a final touch, I twisted some thin steel wire into a single cable and made some decorative rope. I made a groove in the back of 2 purity seal pieces, and then glued the rope before attaching to the shoulder pauldron. In hindsight, it would have been easier to simply glue a length of this metal rope in between the already attached purity seals, but that's part of the joy of trying new things. I'm sure no one will ever notice the gap back here, that I'm deliberately pointing out. Well, there you have it. 8 Terminators with a bunch of crap glued onto them. Honestly though, Terminator armor is scarce, and well-maintained relics worn only by the most elite of the Adeptus Astartes, so it makes sense that they would have copious decorations and repairs to keep these suits operating. I'll see you in the next one where I attach them to 3D bases I made by hand. Until then, have a good one.